So, if you watch my channel regularly, I'm sure you remember this gown that I created a few months ago on the half-scale dummy. So I had an idea to create a mini dress version of this in full scale. I was excited to start this project and see a version of this gown in full scale. And obviously I asked you guys here on YouTube and also on Instagram if you wanted to see this version of this gown. Well, not a single person said no. So I guess I can take a clue and let's see how this comes together. So I actually started this project with a basic bustier that I already had. In the previous video, I created the bustier top and then I turned the pattern into a basic block for myself. I know that for most of my project, I start from the very beginning, so I start draping the bustier as well. But for this project, I just thought there are going to be so many more interesting elements of this dress that I think we can skip that part. I've done it a few times, so you can check any other video of mine if you want to see that process. However, there is a little bit of a fitting issue with this bustier at this point, so I'm just going to fix that. As you can see, I had opened the seams at the hip area, and I am also going to create an additional seam on the side bust area. So I'm just going to make it a little bit more snug around the body. I also filled that gap at the hip area with a piece of calico, so we can have a little bit nicer shaping on the seam here. And then I mark my new seam line on the back and also on the side bust area. So first we need to figure out the petticoat, and that's going to be built on a piece of grosgrain that's going to be sitting on the waist. At this point, I already had a draft petticoat cage. I know this doesn't look like it. I know that it's almost like an art installation at this point, but trust me, there is thought in the process there. I just had this boning case pinned together and then trying to form a petticoat cage. So the final dress is going to have a bowl shape. It's going to be like a mini ball gown. Therefore, we need to create the petticoat in a bowl shape as well. So that's what I'm trying to figure out here. And I'm just going to work slowly and just try to get to the desired shape that I need. So I started to pin my vertical elements to the grosgrain waist, and then I'm just going to try to figure out the volume that I need. For now, everything is just pinned, so I can move things around very quickly. So I needed to keep reshuffling things and repinning things, repositioning the components until I actually got to the desired size and volume. At this point, I decided to add a little bit of horsehair braid. The petticoat felt a little bit flimsy, and I know I could have added probably more rows of the boning, which I actually will a little bit later, but I just wanted to see if the horsehair braid would help the hem, because as I mentioned, it was a little bit flimsy, so I thought it would be nice to add that part so it can retain the shape better. For now, everything is just pinned, and imagine this is just a draft of the final thing. I'm just trying to see what works and what's needed. And as I mentioned, I wanted to add more rows of the bonings, so I started to prepare a few more of those. So I just started to cut the boning to size and filling my boning case. I had quite a few meters to do. I'm aware you can buy one of those that is already covered and it's already in a case, but I decided to suffer instead. Because I already had the boning case and I already had the boning, so I decided to do it this way. I mean, it didn't take that long, so I think it was worth it. So once I had the extra boning channeled, I just started to pin the extra elements to my petticoat. And again, just pinning and repositioning as I was going and just trying to see where else I need extra support for this. Okay, I needed to see this like on a real body, so I decided to put it on. Guys, this is not my size, I'm aware, but I just needed to see where it falls on the body, you know, like, do I need to make it shorter? What the size, you know, is it too big? How it looks like? So I just decided to, yeah, dance around a bit, just check it out and see how it feels like on an actual body. Okay, after this try on, I decided to add a little bit more horsehair braid. So I'm just going to add more horsehair braid to the horizontal components, and also I'm going to add more horsehair to the vertical ones. Right, so I needed to step away from the petticoat a little bit, and I decided to alter the bustier. So obviously I just took everything off of the dummy and taking everything apart and, you know, cutting it up into pieces. And then I took my initial pattern and marked all the alterations and just adjusted the pattern that I already had. Right, the next step was to create an A-line skirt. If you remember from the previous video, if you watched it, or if you didn't, I'm just going to explain. Basically, I need a mini A-line skirt that is going to hang inside the petticoat, because the draped skirt, the draped part of the dress, is going to create a bubble hem. And for that effect, I need a separate skirt inside that is going to pull the hem inside. So I just need like a very simple A-line skirt that is going to be cut in a single organza. Super simple. I drafted it very quickly, nothing complicated. So next I went back to the petticoat, and now I wanted to create the organza layer, which is also part of the petticoat or the underskirt, Because the outer skirt, the draped part, is not going to get attached directly to the petticoat, I need an extra layer of fabric. And also I need that fabric to have lightness and movement, so it cannot be like a flat thing. So I wanted to do a gathered skirt. So when the dress is worn and somebody moves in it, then the dress has a bit more movement to it. So it can sort of like start shifting and moving around. Did this make sense at all? I don't know. You will see. At the moment, I'm just trying a small section of this. I just took a little bit of single organza, put it on the petticoat, and then I just took my main fabric and I just started to mock up like a little part of the dress just to see how it looks. I still was not sure about the size of this petticoat. It looked a little bit too big, to be honest, so I was also checking that. And since the petticoat was still in a draft stage, I decided to take a few notes of the measurements. And because later I will still, need to take this apart and rearrange it properly by correct measurements. That's how I decided to do it. So it's good to have just a quick diagram and a few measurements taken. Once I had all the measurements, I was ready to start assembling the petticoat. On some pieces I secured the boning to the horsehair braid with the machine, so it's easier to handle after. I had also measured and cut all the other elements, so they are all the same size. In some instance, the vertical elements are going to be the same length. Once I had all the elements, I also marked the position on the grosgrain waist, which is going to be essentially a waistband, if you want to call it a waistband. So I marked all the position on that piece so I can start assembling the petticoat. By the way, guys, if you're interested in a complete deep dive into this mini dress, or you want to make it yourself, I have a complete graded pattern with a full sewing manual, with a template for the petticoat, and the full draping tutorial. The link is in the description. Once I had the vertical components inserted into the waist, I also started to mark the position for the horizontal ones. And then I started to add these horizontal elements as well. For now, again, I'm just pinning it, and this is all gonna get secured later. Once I had it all secured, I stitched it. And then I decided that this petticoat is too big. So I started to, take it apart and then remeasure everything again and just make it a little bit smaller. It was way too big. It was a bit too long as well, so I kind of had to shrink it in size. After this, I needed to prepare all the necessary fabric for the gathered skirt that is going to be part of the petticoat. I'm just using a single organza, quite inexpensive organza. I just needed a fabric that would be quite thin so I can gather it. I can gather like a huge amount basically without making things thick, but also a fabric that would help me to kind of lift everything, so it would also not flatten, like it would not get flat on top of the petticoat. So it would help to make things a little bit more fluffy, for lack of better word in my head. I had also decided to cut the A-line skirt for the inner skirt. You know, I explained this a little bit earlier, the skirt that is going to help us create a bubble hem. After I had cut all the single organza pieces for the petticoat, I had to start preparing them. So I started to gather the gathered skirt for the petticoat. In the meantime, I had also stitched the A-line skirt, and it was time to put it all together. As you can see, the A-line skirt is on the inside, and then the petticoat goes on top. And then on top of that, we are going to have this gathered organza layer. Once I had it put together, at this point it just pinned, I decided to, you know, do another little experiment, just get the actual fabric that I'm going to drape with and see how it looks. I was quite happy with everything, so I decided to, you know, finish up the petticoat, attached the A-line skirt on the inside and also stitched the outer gathered layer at the waist. Once I had the petticoat, it was time for me to start working on the bustier. The bustier is going to be in Duchess satin, and it's all going to be fused. One layer of the bustier is going to be lined with horsehair canvas interlining as well. The horsehair is going to be on the outer shell of the bustier because there is going to be a lot of hand stitching, and we are basically going to stitch the outer drape to this outer shell of the bustier, so I'm going to need some extra strength. There's also going to be a waistay on the inside of the bustier. I normally don't do this on my half-scale versions of the dresses because obviously that's just for show, so there is no need, because the waistay is something really functional. It helps to, you know, hold the garment up on the body. So it helps to secure the dress on the body. Once the bustier was done, I just put it on the dummy. I just checked if everything is okay. Now the petticoat is just going to be hand stitched to the bustier, and once that's done, I am going to start draping the outer dress, the draped part, the exciting part is coming. What would this dress be without hand stitching? Obviously I hand stitched the petticoat onto the bustier, and there is a lot more of hand stitching coming. Okay, we are back again. I am going to put everything back on the dummy, and now we are ready to start draping. This dress requires a lot of fabric, and all of these panels are gathered first before they are being pleated and draped onto the base. So I started to gather a lot of fabric. I started off with the skirt area, and I actually joined a couple of panels of this fabric and just left enough length to drape the bubbles around the skirt. So I already joined it, and then it kind of created like a skirt that is gathered at the waist, and now I'm just going to add it onto the petticoat. Once I had all that, I started draping, and if you had watched the previous video of this dress when I was working on the mini dummy, you know the process. I just started making bubbles, so I was just randomly grabbing the fabric and pinning it to the petticoat layer underneath. And then I carried on pinning until I worked through all the fabric that I had on the dummy. Once I was happy, I started hand stitching, and I just secured each to the fabric underneath. And now it was time to create the bubble hem. You know, the bubble hem I talked about earlier. So we just needed to secure this outer layer to the inside skirt parts. The rest of the dress needed more gathered panels, so I just started to gather a few more panels of this fabric. I was ready to drape the top part, and I started with a gathered panel, just securing it around the dummy, so I can just start draping. I just started to smooth the fabric towards the waist and created some random pleats as the gathering allowed me to do. And obviously I just started to, secure everything into position. Later this is all gonna get hand stitched. Once the top part was secured, I gathered the lower part of this panel so I can secure it to the waist and start draping that area. And so I just carried on with my bubbles. Once that was done, I was ready to move on to the rest of the draping that I wanted on the bustier. So I wanted to do something different than the gown that I've done before. So I decided to mix things up a little bit. So I just started to experiment with the fabric and just see what else I could do. I had several different variations of the drape that I wanted to do. Actually, I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I just started experimenting. I just, positioned the fabric here and there, spreading it apart, making little loops, knots. I had no idea what I wanted. But then it got to a point when I kind of settled on something, and so I started working towards that. Once I had everything settled, all it needed was just some finishing touches.